stretching before her. She could not live through them. She could not. She cowed down by her window and wished for the first time in her young, gay life that she could die too. If Gilbert went away from her without one word or sign or message, she could not live. Nothing was of any value without him. She belonged to him, and he to her. In her hour of supreme agony, she had no doubt of that. He did not love Christine Stewart, never had loved Christine Stewart. What a fool she had been not to realize what the bond was that had held her to Gilbert. To think that the flattered fancy she'd felt for Roy Gardner had been love. And now she must pay for her folly as for a crime. Mrs. Lynde and Marilla crept to her door before they went to bed, shook their heads doubtfully at each other over the silence, and went away. The storm raged all night, but when the dawn came, it was spent. Anne saw a fairy fringe of light on the skirts of darkness. Soon the eastern hilltops had a fire-shot ruby rim. The crowds rolled themselves away into great, soft, white masses on the horizon. The sky gleamed blue and silvery. A hush fell over the world. Anne rose from her knees and crept downstairs. The freshness of the rain wind blew against her white face as she went out into the yard and cooled her dry, burning eyes. A merry, rollicking whistle was lilting up the lane. A moment later, Pacifique Boat came in sight. Anne's physical strength suddenly failed her. If she had not clutched at a low willow bough, she would have fallen. Pacifique was George Fletcher's hired man, and George Fletcher lived next door to the Blythes. Mrs. Fletcher was Gilbert's aunt. Pacifique would know if Pacifique would know what there was to be known. Pacifique strode sturdily on the red lane, whistling. He did not see Anne. She made 3 futile attempts to call to him. He was almost past before she succeeded in making her quivering lips call. Pacifique. Pacifique turned with a grin and a cheerful good morning. Pacifique, said Anne faintly. Did you come from George Fletcher's this morning? Sure, said Pacifique amiably. I got the word last night that my father, he was sick. I was so stormy I couldn't go then. So I start very early this morning. I'm going through the woods for a shortcut. Did you hear how Gilbert Blythe was this morning? Anne's desperation drove her to the question. Even the worst would be more endurable than this hideous suspense. He's better, said Pacifique. He got the turn last night. Doctor says he'll be all right now. Soon, well, had a close shave. He just about killed himself at college. I must hurry. The old man, he'll be in a hurry to see me. Pacifique resumed his walk and his whistle. Anne gazed after him, where joy was driving out the strained anguish of the night. He was a very lank youth, but in her sight, his raggedness was as beautiful as those who bring good tidings on the mountains. Never as long as she lived would Anne see Pacifique's face without a warm remembrance of the moment when he had given her the oil of joy for the morning. Long after his gay whistle had faded into the phantom of music, and then silence far up the maples of Lover's Lane, Anne stood under the willows, tasting the poignant sweetness of life when some great dread has been removed from it. The morning was a cup filled with mist and glamour. In the corner near her was a rich surprise of new-blown, crystal-dewed roses. The trills and trickles of song from the birds in the big tree above her seemed in perfect accord with her mood. A sentence from a very old, very true, very wonderful book came to her lips. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. End of chapter 40. Oh my gosh, I haven't had to do a French accent since like Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. But every once in a while, we have we have moments where things are written in dialect. In North and South, we have, the really like northern accent of Nicholas Higgins, and Pacifique has like a written French accent in here. All right, I won't keep you guys in too much suspense there. We'll jump on into our reading pretty quickly here, but with Gilbert, having a death scare, I don't know that was the way that a lot of people were thinking this was going to go. When we're looking at things like and turning down a proposal here and there, right? Where it's like, maybe she'll just like come to her senses and it'll be fine. And, all of that's going to go according to plan. Well, she came around to where she was feeling, and it's a good thing that, Gilbert wasn't in fact going to die. But, we in fact and instead had a bit of a death scare there. Wasn't simply a, I've realized that instead of Roy, it's Gilbert that I want all along. It's like, oh no, Gilbert nearly, we have seen how deadly that can be from Oregon Trail. So, speaking of, thank you, Vitangle. I turned them off. Thanks for grabbing those. All right. Just so I'm not keeping you waiting too long for the end of the book, we'll jump on in here into chapter 41. Love takes up the glass of time. I've come up to ask you to go for one of our old-time rambles through September woods and over hills where spices grow this afternoon, said Gilbert, coming suddenly around the porch corner. Suppose we visit Hester Gray's garden. Anne, sitting on the stone step with her lap full of a pale, filmy green stuff, looked up rather blankly. Oh, I wish I could, she said slowly. But I really can't, Gilbert. I'm going to Alice Penhallow's wedding this evening, I've got to do something to this dress, and by the time it's finished, I'll have to get ready. I'm so sorry. I'd love to go. Well, can you go tomorrow afternoon, then? Asked Gilbert, apparently not much disappointed. Yes, I think so. In that case, I shall hie me home at once to do something I should have otherwise have to do tomorrow. So Alice Penhallow's to be married tonight. 3 weddings for you. One summer, Anne. Phil's, Alice's, and Jane's. I'll never forgive Jane for not inviting me to her wedding. You can't really blame her when you think of the tremendous Andrews connections who had to be invited. The house could hardly hold them all. I was only bidden by the grace of being Jane's old chum, at least on Jane's part. I really think Miss Harmon's motive for inviting me was to let me see Jane's surpassing gorgeousness. Is it true she wore so many diamonds you couldn't tell where the diamonds left off and Jane began? Anne laughed. She certainly wore a good many, with all the diamonds and white satin and tulle and lace and roses and orange blossoms. Prim little Jane was almost lost to sight, but she was very happy, and so was Mr. Inglis, and so was Mrs. Harmon. Is that the dress you're going to wear tonight? Asked Gilbert, looking down at the fluffs and frills. Yes, isn't it pretty? And I shall wear starflowers in my hair. The haunted wood is full of them this summer. Gilbert had a sudden vision of Anne, arrayed in a frilly green gown with the virginal curves of arms and throat slipping out of it, and white stars shining against the coils of her ruddy hair. The vision made him catch his breath, but he turned lightly away. "Well, I'll be up tomorrow. Hope you have a good time tonight." Anne looked after him as he strode away and sighed. Gilbert was friendly. Very friendly. Far too friendly. He had come quite often to Green Gables after his recovery, and something of their old comradeship had returned. But Anne no longer found it satisfying. The rose of love made the blossom of friendship pale and scentless by contrast. And Anne had begun to doubt if Gilbert now found anything for her but a friendship. In the common light of common day, her radiant certainty of that rapt morning had faded. She was haunted by a miserable fear that her mistake could never be rectified. It was quite likely that it was Christine whom Gilbert loved after all. Perhaps he was even engaged to her. Anne tried to put all unsettling hopes out of her heart and reconcile herself to a future where work and ambition must take the place of love. She could do good, if not noble work as a teacher, and the success her little sketches were beginning to meet with in some certain editorial sanctums augured well for her budding literary dreams. But... Anne picked up her green dress and sighed again. When Gilbert came the next afternoon, he found Anne waiting for him, fresh as the dawn and fair as a star after all the gaiety of the preceding night. She wore a green dress. Not the one she had worn to the wedding, but an old one which Gilbert had told her at a Redmond reception he liked especially. It was just the shade of green that brought out the rich tints of her hair, and the starry gray of her eyes, and the iris-like delicacy of her skin. Gilbert, glancing at her sideways as they walked along a shadowy wood path, thought she had never looked so lovely. Anne, glancing sideways at Gilbert, now and then, thought how much older he looked since his illness. It was as if he had put boyhood behind him forever. The day was beautiful, and the way was beautiful. Anne was almost sorry when they reached Hester Gray's garden and sat down on the old bench. But it was beautiful there, too, as beautiful as it had been on the faraway day of the golden picnic, when Diana and Jane and Priscilla and she had found it. And then it had been lovely with narcissus and violets. Now goldenrod had kindled its fairy torches in the corners and asters dotted it bluely. The call of the brook came up through the woods from the valley, with birches and with all of its old allurement. The mellow air was full of the purr of the sea. Beyond were fields rimmed by fences, bleached silvery gray in the suns of many summers, and long hills scarfed with the shadows of autumnal clouds. With the blowing of the west wind, old dreams returned. "I think," said Anne softly, "that the land where dreams come true is in that blue haze yonder over that little valley." "Have you any unfulfilled dreams, Anne?" asked Gilbert. Something in his tone, something she had not heard since that miserable evening in the orchard at Patty's place, made Anne's heart beat wildly. But she made answer lightly. "Of course, everybody has. It wouldn't do well for us to have all of our dreams fulfilled. We'd be as good as dead if we had nothing left to dream about. What a delicious aroma that low descending sun is extracting from the asters and ferns. I wish we could see perfumes as well as smell them. I'm sure they'd be very beautiful." Gilbert was not to be thus sidetracked. "I have a dream," he said slowly. "I persist in dreaming it, although it has often seemed to me it could never come true. I dream of a home with a hearth fire in it, a cat and a dog, the footsteps of friends, and you." Anne wanted to speak, but she could find no words. Happiness was breaking over her like a wave. It almost frightened her. "I asked you a question over 2 years ago, Anne. If I ask it today, will you give me a different answer?" Still, Anne could not speak. But she lifted her eyes, shining with all the love rapture of countless generations, and looked into his for a moment. He wanted no other answer. They lingered in the old garden until twilight, sweet as dusk in Eden must have been, crept over it. There was so much to talk over and recall. Things said and done and heard and thought and felt and misunderstood. "I thought you loved Christine Stewart," Anne told him as reproachfully as if she had not given him every reason to suppose that she loved Roy Gardner. Gilbert laughed boyishly. "Christine was engaged to somebody in her hometown. I knew it, and she knew it. When her brother graduated, he told me his sister was coming to Kingsport the next winter to take music and asked if I would look after her a bit. She knew no one and would be very lonely. So I did. And then I liked Christine for her own sake. She is one of the nicest girls I've ever known. I knew college gossip credited us with being in love with each other. I didn't care. Nothing mattered much to me for a time there, as you told me you could never love me, Anne. There was nobody else. There never could be anyone else for me but you. I've loved you ever since the day you broke your slate over my head in school." "I don't see how you could keep on loving me when I was such a little fool," said Anne. "Well, I tried to stop," said Gilbert frankly. "Not because I thought you what you call yourself, but because I felt sure there was no chance for me after Gardner came on the scene. But I couldn't. And I can't tell you either what it's meant to me these 2 years to believe you were going to marry him and be told every week by some busybody your engagement was on the point of being announced. I believed it until one blessed day when I was sitting up after the fever. I got a letter from Phil Blake, in which she told me there was really nothing between you and Roy and advised me to try again. Well, the doctor was amazed at my rapid recovery after that." Anne laughed and then shivered. "I can never forget the night I thought you were dying, Gilbert. Oh, I knew then, and I thought it was too late. But it wasn't, sweetheart. Oh, Anne, this makes up for everything, doesn't it? Let's resolve to keep this day sacred to perfect beauty all our lives for the gift it has given us." "It is the birthday of our happiness," said Anne softly. "I've always loved this old garden of Hester Gray's, and now it will be dearer to me than ever." "I'll have to ask you to wait a long time, Anne," said Gilbert sadly. "It'll be 3 years before I finish my medical course. And even then, there will be no diamond sunbursts and marble halls." Anne laughed. "I don't want sunbursts and marble halls. I just want you. You see, I'm quite as shameless as Phil about it. Sunbursts and marble halls may be all very well, but there is more scope for imagination without them. And as for the waiting, that doesn't matter. We'll just be happy, waiting and working for each other. And dreaming. Oh, dreams will be very sweet now." Gilbert drew her close to him and kissed her, and they walked home together in the dark, crowned king and queen in the bridal realm of love, along winding paths fringed with the sweetest flowers that ever bloomed, and over haunted meadows where winds of hope and memory blew. The end. It happened! Aww. Right? Happy cry. They finally, after 3 books, got there. And it took Gilbert almost dying for it to happen. Oh, boy. I think that's beautiful. Since the day you smacked my head. It was so long ago. and I think we kind of knew it too, right? When he like saved her from drowning, we were kind of like, I think he's got a crush on her. But, you know, it took her a lot longer to get there. And I think, you know, people have always talked about like the strength of Ellen Montgomery's prose. You know, she talks so rapturously about the beauty of Prince Edward Island. And like, it is gorgeous there. But to give us this like happy moment here, to have the perfect ending in the perfect location, where it's a place that has happy, beautiful memories for them both. You get to see the beauty, like looking out over the ocean with all of the flowers, you know, the beautiful like red sand beaches and stuff. And to then have this moment of like perfect happiness where it all worked out. And they were both like, you know, she was this close to getting married to somebody else. And they found each other. Very sweet. So, you know, the next time we poke our head into Anne, what is the next one? Is it? Let me double check. We'll give Anne a little bit of a break, but you know, she'll come back again on the polls soon enough, because I think we all enjoyed her books very much. But yes, Anne of Windy Poplars is the next one. Just taking a look for it on Gutenberg here. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Oh my gosh, does Gutenberg not have this one? Oh, American copyright renewed in 1963. Well, interesting. So it's the only one that isn't that isn't available in the public domain. That's very interesting. So the next story in this this series, it was written, I think, like mostly in that much like Dracula, which is that like epistolary style where it's like written in letters. Because, you know, Gilbert is taking medical school and Anne is away. So there's a lot of like letters between them. But, so I'll have to figure out how I want to approach that, given that, like, the next book in this series is the only one that's, like, not copyright free. Means we might take a little bit of a break from Anne for a little while. We'll see. At any rate, thank you guys so much for dropping in on this battle. Let's go take him out. Yeah, Fatangle, I'm sorry about the Gimme Ghoul. It's one of the like newer ones, like the most recent Gen 9 or whatever. I'm sorry that you missed it. Crazy got it though. Congratulations, Crazy. We're starting to see a few more of those like more recent gens appearing. Arcaria and Aardvark, the A-team, one could say. Getting most kills and assists, and Fatangle. There's your consolation prize for missing Fatangle. Is getting the extra gold. There's a Spritzy in chat, you guys. For those playing PCG, feel free to Pokecatch. So we're going to make our way towards this loyalty gold chest next. We are. Feel free to hop on in and join me. The next one is going to be the big gold. I will live, he says. Oh dear. All right. We are officially complete on Anne. Now to tie the end onto North and South. So, North and South are quite in-depth, so a little bit of a longer recap. Please forgive. But here's our little rundown of where we're picking up. We begin in the beautiful... idyllic south of England in Helston, with our stubborn and opinionated heroine, Margaret Hale. She lives there with her parson father and her aristocratic mother, who married below her status to be with the parson. As the story begins, Margaret is helping her cousin Edith, who is about to be wed to a Captain Lennox. And there, Margaret is doted upon by his brother, Henry Lennox. And Margaret turns down Henry's proposal. She only sees him as a friend. And shortly after this, Margaret's father, Mr. Hale, seems to be feeling some stress. There are mental anxieties for him. And Margaret assumes that this is news about her brother, Frederick, a member of the British Navy on a ship that is mutinied. If Frederick returns home, he will be tried as a mutineer, and equivalent officers of his rank, when they've been brought to trial, have been hanged. So he is hiding out near Spain. But when Mr. Hale says it isn't Frederick that has troubled his mind, she asks what it is. And Mr. Hale confesses that he has had doubts of his faith, and he feels that he must leave his post as a pastor. And he has made arrangements for the family to sell their home and move to the industrial city of Milton Northern. Mr. Hale is a very gentle man, but he is afraid of conflict to the point of cowardice, and he forces Margaret to be the one to break the news to her mother that they are moving and packing up their lives. And Mrs. Hale is already in quite poor health. And we discover throughout the book she has a terminal degenerative condition. So for work, Mr. Hale has set up a job as a tutor in Milton, and his first pupil is to be a Mr. John Thornton, a wealthy owner of a cotton mill, and he and Margaret butt heads. They end up clashing with their culture and their values. When Northerners talk about the progress that they must make for the sake of progress, as she believes them to be very cold and calculating. And conversely, he believes that Southerners are idealistic, hedonistic. He describes them as flies in honey. And Mrs. Thornton, who has worked very, very hard to help bring up her son to be this wealthy factory owner that he is, she doesn't believe that anybody's good enough for her son, and she dissuades him from any communication with that new Hale girl. But then when Mr. Thornton tells her Margaret wouldn't be interested in him anyway because they've butted heads, she kind of flips the script and goes, well, how dare she not want my son? Does she think she's the queen or something?